Welcome, everyone, to the Stadium Journey podcast. It is great to be here on this special date and time to welcome today's special guest. Stadium Journey is the worldwide leader in information and recommendations for the sports traveler. You can check out our website at stadiumjourney.com for thousands of reviews in thousands of venues in multiple leagues and countries. And you are tuned in to the Stadium Journey podcast, and we record usually twice a month, normally on Tuesdays, and you could be viewed, and that can be viewed live on Dan Law TV or on the Stadium Journey YouTube channel. The audio versions can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you would find your fine podcast. The back catalog for all of our past episodes can also be found at hiactalkradio.com. And I am flying solo here today almost. It's just me and Dan because our normal host, Paul Baker, he is out at UMass Dartmouth today doing some hockey PAing. You could follow him at PuckmanRI. Mark Viquez is schooling this evening, and you can find him at Ballpark Hunter. But our producer is here, and all-around happy guy with everything Philly coming up big right now. Dan Colachico is here, and you can follow him at DanLaw83. And I am your pinch hit host, Dave Cotney. You could follow me at ProFan9.
I just want to point out before you introduce our wonderful guest that Mark doesn't actually have schooling. He's a coward. Like, he dropped 10 games like the Mets would, and he didn't want me to heckle him.
Okay.
I want that on record. Anyway,
on record. Okay, it's on record.
Thank you.
But anyway, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome our special guest today. I have a snippet of her resume because if we read the whole thing, it would take like the entire show. So she is the CEO and COO of the Rochester Red Wings, which she has been since 2010. She's worked for the Red Wings for her whole life. I don't want to say it's a family business, but it kind of feels like a family business. She is a member of the Red Wings Hall of Fame as of 2007. She was the Rawlings Baseball Woman of the Year of 1994 and the Minor League Baseball Executive of the Year 2008. I think I got that all right. It is my pleasure to welcome Naomi Silver to join us today.
Thank you so much, Dave. Dan, thanks a lot for having me.
Did I miss anything there? I probably did, but
close enough. After
close
that,
enough?
It's just too boring after that. So you did perfectly.
Well, I got to be honest, when you start doing the research and you start looking and it's just one thing after another, it's like, wow. So you've had a really impressive career thus far. So, Naomi reached out to me after I had written the most recent review of the Rochester Red Wings, of my Rochester Red Wings visit. We've done a Rochester Red Wings obstructed views with Paul. All the guys know it's one of my favorite spots to go in baseball anywhere, especially in minor league baseball. And that connection has given us the opportunity to talk with Naomi today about the Red Wings, let's say past, present, and future. So let's start with the present. What do you feel that the Red Wings as an organization, as a sporting franchise, what do you feel that they mean to the city of Rochester?
You know, like most teams in any city, it brings people together. It's just, something that people have in common. It's your team, it's your home team. You can get excited and get behind it. And I think that means a lot to people, and Rochester is no different. We have really great fans, devoted fans. And whether or not you're a fan, you kind of have an appreciation for what a team means to your community in terms of, the outreach. You may not come to the ballpark, but maybe you've heard of us because we've donated something to an organization that you're interested in. Or maybe you have your nephew works for us 6 months of the year during the season. And, those kind of things are important. We're sort of embedded. I think all of us are really embedded in the community. And I do think people appreciate that. So, it's what makes us tick. It's what we feed off of to try and do our best to attract fans, make them feel like we're doing good in the community.
And I think that's almost the heartbeat of minor league baseball in and of itself, because you as managers of a minor league team, there's very little that you can do with who's on the field. And as a fan of a minor league baseball team, you're not stuck to anybody for a long time. It's right. They're in, and maybe they move up and maybe they move out, but nobody seems to be there very long. So it has to be more than just the players on the field and what the stats sheet say and what the standings say at the end of the year.
You're so right. Oftentimes, most often, the players that are doing the best may be the players that you have for the least amount of time. So we really have to rely on the whole entertainment package, not just, focusing in on a player who may only be with us, a month or 6 weeks. So it's very important to us to keep our, to keep things fresh, current, understand what people want, and kind of are able to adjust to what people want. That's what brings people into the ballpark. It's great to see a win, but in the minor leagues and often in the big leagues, you can hardly keep track of the players. It's not like the old days when a player was with a team for his career or half of his career. Now you really have to be able to market yourself on the bigger picture, which is, in the minor leagues, that's really what it's all about for us.
Yeah, I find that in my travels, there's very few times that you find like a minor league player who is, honored to the point of a number retirement. And I mean, there are a few instances. One that I find kind of interesting because it's a little bit different is Jeff Manto, who essentially was honored for longevity, whereas, others, maybe it's like, the cultural factor, where, they were one of the first African Americans to play in the league or something like that. But, Jeff Manto being fairly recent, and having that longevity, it's almost unheard of.
It's unusual, way back back in the day, we not only a minor league team, not only was affiliated with a big league club that provided most of the players, but we could also hire and pay for players ourselves. So if someone was particularly talented, like 4A kind of talent, what they call AAA players that are just better, but not enough to go to the big leagues, those guys, if they happen to be, good with the fans, we would actually hire them. But the big leagues, did away with that, and rightly so. They wanted us to play the guys that they're trying to get to the big leagues, not the guys that may have just been the fan favorite. So the game has changed over the years in that way. But yeah, when a guy has been around for a number of years, they can really make a difference in the community. People begin to really relate to him.
So let's kind of stick with this this community theme that we're on, and in researching my first review of the Red Wings, one of the and to me it's one of the great stories in baseball, let alone minor league baseball, is the story of how the Red Wings really galvanized their presence in Rochester, and that is with the 72-day miracle that happened in 1957. Now you can test me on this. Let's see if I've got it. So in in before 1957, the the affiliate of the Red Wings was the St. Louis Cardinals, or like the parent, and they had decided that they were not going to continue that situation, and Rochester was going to lose the team. And Maury Silver decided, who was your father, decided that that was not acceptable and that baseball needed to stay in Rochester. And he, in 72 days, ran, is it fair to call it a stock drive?
Yes, exactly.
To raise enough money to keep the team in Rochester. Am I good there?
You got it. That's awesome. Exactly what happened.
Are the remnants of that, almost community ownership, does that still permeate in the organization today?
Well, I think that those people who bought shares now likely have passed them along most often to their kids and grandkids and so on. Rarely does a share of stock get sold to, someone else, but if it is, then it's probably a neighbor. And those people who own those shares are very proud of them, and proud to be a shareholder. And honestly, I hear from shareholders all the time, I have a share of stock, and it does give a closeness from that fan to the ball club. But it doesn't take a shareholder. You could be a season seat holder and feel that kind of commitment as well. So as much as we appreciate the shareholders, and let's face it, we would not, as you said, Dave, we would not have baseball in Rochester if we had not had the community rally to keep the team. There was no way that the Cardinals had other AAA teams that were much more successful in drawing and making a little money for them. They were losing money in Rochester. And it was, it was a time when big league clubs were whittling down the number of ball clubs that they had. So being able to buy the franchise was a miracle. It was really something special. And, it has allowed us to be the longest continuously operating ball club in the minor leagues. So that is pretty special. And I think people take a great pride in that fact in itself.
We have a question from the audience.
Now,
if you can't answer this,
okay,
she completely understands. This question is from Ash. Serious question. She has a serious question and then a not so serious question, just to sidetrack for a second.
Okay.
So we're going to do the serious question first. How much financial support does the parent ball club give to your team? And for those who don't know right now, I believe it is the Nationals.
It is the Washington Nationals, right? They pay all of the on-field personnel. So that is players, managers, coaches, trainers, nutritionists, everyone that is part of the team is paid for by the big league parent club. And that is a standard contract. It is that way across all minor leagues.
Sorry, I'll get to your goofy question in a second.
That's okay. It's a goofy question, though. That's okay.
But I do want to follow up on that. So how has that changed since I don't know what you guys call it on the inside. On the outside, we call it the Great Purge, the minor league purge that we're just fresh coming off of. So how is that that structure and those finances, how has that changed?
Those finances really haven't changed. We have been operating that way for quite a long time. I'm going to say it's been the last 40 years that we have not had any payroll responsibility. And then going back to what I said earlier, that they didn't want us to pay the players because they didn't want us to have any say in really who was on the field. And, if I were paying 20% of a guy's salary and he didn't get into a game for a month, I'd be pretty upset about that. And they didn't want to deal with that kind of thing. It made sense. So they took over that piece of it. And back then, we in negotiating our agreement with Major League Baseball, there became a split of, who would pay for uniforms, balls, bats, and tried to come up with something equitable that the minor league teams could afford, and that the big league teams felt like, there was enough of a buy-in on our end that they could, that they would feel like, we were participating.
Now, do you want to ask your goofy question?
Yeah. The same person had to ask this. She asked it right at the intro, and I was like, I'm not asking that now. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But since it's my turn, I'm going to take this opportunity. Ash would like to know, the waves behind you, is it backlit, and do they move?
That is so funny. It is just it's like pieces of drywall that have this design that were pieced together, and there's a light that runs across the top that kind of washes down the wall. How about that?
Thank you. Now she'll leave me alone. Because she will.
Ash. Thanks for noticing my decor.
I know Ash appreciates this interview, which is going to lead into my personal question. Being she's a video gamer, she's in real estate, she's a very smart woman, and she gets a lot of flack on the internet from males. What was it like growing up with your dad already in the business and moving up through the ranks, being a woman in a perceived mostly male dominated field?
Mostly
all male dominated field. I was trying to be polite, but yeah, it's males everywhere.
I go into a room of 120 owners, and 119 of them are men. So that's it's pretty dominated.
Okay, I guess domination.
But that's the way it always has been. So it's not new. So I have a different kind of background maybe than maybe you're aware of. Dave, you've done your homework, so maybe you know more. I was 15 when my dad passed away, and my mom really stepped into the role of chairman of the board of the ball club. The ball club, after the 72-day miracle, my dad took over. He was a volunteer, but he took over that ball club and he ran it like one of his businesses, and they were very successful. But the ball club failed when he left, and he came back in and righted it. Left and it failed. He came back in. And for a third time, he wasn't around. My mom was afraid that everything that he had worked for was going to disappear. So she got involved with the ball club. And then during that time, so I was 15 at that time. When I was 23, I married a ball player. Go figure. And we traveled in baseball for the next 10 years. And, sort of through osmosis, I guess, I saw every kind of operation you could imagine: minor league, big league, Latin American. And you learn a lot about the game, whether or not you're not even the game, the operation of a ball club, whether it's good or bad, what makes it good, what makes it bad, what turns fans on and what doesn't. And that's kind of where I got it. So long before, so backing up, I guess, a little bit, before I came back to Rochester when I was more than 30, and started working at the ballpark, I knew a lot of ball club operators through all of this experience, and they accepted me as a person who was going to get involved. So I didn't have an uphill battle, at least not in the baseball realm. I really didn't. They've been pretty decent to me all along, and I think that was out of respect for my father, my mother. um I don't know, it's a boys club, but not to the extent of it being exclusionary. Is that the word I want?
That's great. Ash has not a follow-up, but just a comment. I will say I'm a Red Wing fan now. Let's go. Fan of any woman-led sports team. Women belong in sports.
That is awesome. My son has that sweatshirt. Women belong in sports.
Nice.
Nice. I did have that on my list of questions. Well, maybe not exactly that, but going in that direction. So
yeah, but you know what, Dave?
Hey, that's all right.
I stole it from you, so you cross it out. Ha.
There you go. There you go. Actually, I would like to go back to the purge. We ran a few podcasts when the whole idea of the purge came around, and one of the things we did is we kind of sat around and said, well, I think this is going to happen, I think that's going to happen, I think this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Really, before any of the names and faces and affiliates and all that kind of stuff were bandied about. And at the time, the Red Wings were affiliated with the Minnesota Twins, and I don't want to. We didn't have inside information, but I think we were pretty confident that the affiliation of the Twins was going to go to St. Paul. And one of the things I said was, I'm worried about what's going to happen to the Red Wings, because I saw a lot of affiliations around that were not going to be broken. Like the Yankees was not going to be broken. The Blue Jays and the Bisons was pretty solid. The Clippers and Cleveland were solid. Baltimore and Norfolk were solid. And I struggled to see where Rochester was going to fit into the grand scheme of things. What was that period of time like in the organization? I guess from when it was coming down that there were going to be these big changes, to the point where, congratulations, you're part of the inner circle and you are now with the Washington Nationals.
Well, you had your thinking was correct. A little worried, but the Nationals had their AAA team out west, and we knew that they wanted to come east. And you described those affiliations, AAA to the big leagues, perfectly. And in doing so, you had to, listening to it, you recognize those were geographically aligned, right? Buffalo and Toronto and Columbus and Cleveland and all of those that you mentioned. So where would be a logical place, a AAA city for the Nationals to go? And we hoped that it would be Rochester. And in fact, it was a worrisome time, but we had a few people that were pulling for us, that were influential, and we have a decent reputation as ball club operators in Rochester. They were great, and it fit pretty well. We had fans that we raised Minnesota Twins fans. We were with them for quite a long time, but when we first became affiliated, it was like, let's see, the Twin Cities, where are those? People hadn't been to the Twin Cities. They just weren't aware. But the Washington Nationals had a certain had a certain flair to it, and people are familiar with Washington. Who hasn't been to Washington, on their 8th grade trip or something? So,
Me.
Okay.
We don't go to Washington for our 8th grade trip.
Good point. Good point. Not you Canadians.
No.
But it absolutely was, it felt right from the beginning, and, it's worked out pretty well for us.
Have you noticed any kind of changes in the business with a change in affiliation?
No. Honestly, I think that the change in affiliation, people, Washington resonates with people a little bit. We have more fans that now will go to a ball game in Washington, and vice versa. Washington folks that come to the area, they want to see the AAA team. We hear that a lot more than we did certainly with Minnesota, but the business model hasn't changed at all, really.
Yeah, that the AAA model is so much different than all of the other levels, where, I mean, we noticed that geography to the parent club was going to be paramount, as opposed to geography within, where, you've got your Southern League, which needs to be all close so they can get to one another. Whereas, the major leagues, they want, and being a Blue Jays fan, I see this all the time. They want to be close to their affiliate so they can get that pitcher down, because he's gone too long and they need somebody up for tomorrow, and they bring him up in 3 hours or whatever, and they need to have that quick turnaround, which is totally different from any other level.
That is absolutely right. And it happens every day. There are player moves every single day, AAA to the big leagues and back. So it's, being convenient is paramount.
With that up and down, how impactful is a rehab assignment in Rochester? So if you get like a major leaguer come down for a 3-game spell or whatever, does that have a big impact, or is it just another day?
Honestly, it depends on who it is. When it's Steven Strasburg, it's a big deal. A lesser recognizable name, not as important to us. And it works that way with the visiting team as well. We'll have a visiting big leaguer doing a rehab, and that can draw, just as well. If it's a New York Yankees player traveling with Scranton, they come to Rochester, it is a big deal for us. So, and social media helps us get that word out real quickly. In days gone by, people might not have even realized it unless they were at the game and, oh, bonus. But now, people know about it, they hear about it, and it can be impactful for sure.
So one of the, and now again, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, if I got my timeline wrong here. You were closely involved with the move to the new stadium. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And I'm not sure. I don't know the politics involved of building the stadium, because it is a public stadium. Is it a publicly owned stadium? If I've got that right.
It is. The county here owns the stadium. They're our landlord.
Okay, so what kind of challenges were there from involved in, I don't know if you were involved in the design at all, it's almost painful. This is going to be painful for me to say. I've never said it before. For innovative field. I've never said that before. So for those listening, Rochester Red Wings now play at Innovative Field, which was, until, I don't know, maybe a month ago, it was Frontier Field. And for my duration
week ago, Dave, a week ago.
A week ago. Okay. And now I feel really good that we're up on that one. So what kind of challenges, what was that like?
Getting a new stadium built, and ours is now 26 years old. Getting a new stadium built is it's a feat, because it involves public money and and politicians. So nothing ever happens easily. There are those who are going to be for it and those who are going to be against it, and you hope that finally they can come to terms with one another and decide that it's really the best for the community. But I would try to prove what it would mean to the economy, to employment, just so many things. And what do you do if you don't have a stadium that you can play in and draw fans? And we were playing in a stadium that was 70 years old, so it was definitely time. So moving into the new stadium and creating a lease that we thought was equitable for the county and for us, it took some work. It took a few years for it to happen, and some cities will work on it for years and it doesn't happen. And there are teams in our own league that have fallen victim to playing in a field that the city fathers are not willing to replace, and they lose their team. It's particularly an issue now because Major League Baseball requires certain things in a stadium, and none of us are really up to standard when it comes to players' facilities, which is what Major League Baseball is most concerned with. So it's it's something that each one of us that has a baseball team is having to work with the city fathers, the county, the state that we live in, and try and get money to upgrade our facilities. And the upgrade of facilities, if I can go off on this tangent, is logical. When our stadium was built 25 years ago, we had 24 guys on our roster. We have 35 guys that the team travels with now. We had 3 coaches. We have 7 now. Everything has changed. Nutrition is a big deal now. 25 years ago, guys were still big drinkers and, carousers, sort of. Today, it's just a different ball game. These are guys that are careful about what they eat. They're careful about, drinking. They are family men. It's just a different game. And the big league team wants to, I guess I'll say, nurture that kind of a human being, that they don't want the guys that are going to get in trouble and give them a black eye, So we get it. It's time for these changes to occur. So that's, that's been, we live in a place right now where our county executive here is all about it. The governor has been very good to us, and we can make the changes that are necessary, not only for the players, but for the fans as well.
Yeah, we had an author on our podcast once who wrote a book. It was called Clubby, and it was about him as a clubhouse attendant. And it was shocking. Like, these guys would pay a couple bucks, they were clubhouse dues to have their laundry done and to get like bologna sandwiches after. And you think about the major leagues, and it just seemed so logical that they would have to take this step. Like, wait a second, we're investing all of this money, not by the time you get to AAA, it's like you're not just investing in the AAA team, but the AA team and the 3 single A teams and the rookie league team, plus the scouting. And you've put all this money into this guy, and he's coming up and he's going to hit the minor leagues, and he's got to live on bologna sandwiches after. Like, that makes no sense. Right. So that part was just shocking to me to hear.
The game has changed. The game is changing for sure. And, really to the benefit of the guys in it, the guys that are playing it. It's a tough life, even when things are all going well in the minor leagues, it's a tough life. You're moving around, you may have a wife and a kid, and it's a challenge. So, trying to make life as stable for them as possible when they're on the road and when they're at home playing, it's a good thing.
What kind of facility upgrades are either done or needed as a result of these changes in Rochester?
Ash will like this. We are going to have a female locker room, and that is something that's being required. There are more women in the game. There aren't a lot of coaches, although there are some, but they are in the game. They're trainers, they're nutritionists. And these women need a place to be. So that is something that we're all taking care of. We all have to provide. We're a little landlocked often in our stadiums, so it's caused us to need to really rethink how the layouts of our buildings and so on. Things like, a place where the guys can sit down and actually eat their meal, so they don't have to sit in their locker. Good idea, huh? All kinds of things like that, more lockers, many more lockers, better conditions for the coaches, instead of being, tightly quartered, giving them a little more space. They need desks. They do a lot of work, video rooms, these things that have, that technology has brought to us. And we've had a video room for quite a number of years. But that was at the expense of taking it out of somebody else's office. So those are the kind of things that are important.
Yeah, it's funny. Like as fans, we read, oh well, this stadium needs X amount of dollars in upgrades, and whatever's going to happen. None of those things are things that I'm ever going to see, unless I get like a personal invitation to tour the clubhouse. But Joe average fan who walks through the gates and goes and buys some food and sits down and watches the game, they're never going to see any of that stuff. So, I mean, it's great to hear, because I think a lot of people don't understand. Most fans don't know what's under the seats. They don't see what it's like.
Right.
You think, oh, well, you're a professional athlete, it must be beautiful, right? But when you do a major league tour or an NFL stadium tour and you get to see that stuff, you're like, wow. But you don't really know what happens in those minor league facilities.
Right. That's absolutely true. And in our particular case, we have a fan improvement project going on as well. So so it's not all about the players. So we can also give some upgrades to our fans. And again, 26 years into a stadium, there are upgrades that are needed. Stadiums are being built a little differently. We want to keep up with the Joneses.
Let's go back to innovative field. That just doesn't feel right.
Get used to it, though.
I'll get there.
I know.
What are your favorite features of the stadium?
Wow, that is a really great question. It's home, so the features that I like are I guess all of them. I love our concessions. It's I think we had a good hand in designing the facility. We were very lucky that way. Not every team does have that. So we built concession stands from one end of the stadium to the other, and we run them all ourselves. And when something doesn't go right, we adapt quickly to try and fix it. If we're not if we're not moving it along fast enough, let's reconfigure the line. If the hot dogs coming off that grill are not coming off the way we want them, we will do something about it. So just the fact that we run our own concessions is extremely important to me, and that's probably the thing that I appreciate most of all. We can do what our fans want, we provide. And you'll come in, every time you come in, there's probably at least one concession stand that's moved on to another theme, and just trying to keep up with what's current and what's popular. You know, we had a sushi stand at one time that was the hot thing 10 years ago or so, and tacos are the hot thing now, or it's all over the place, but that is a fun business to be in.
I love the concession scene there. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
In combination with like the number of fans that are there, what I love about it is everything's different. Like it's not like 4 of the exact same menu in 4 different spots. You go to this end for, your ice cream or whatever, and you go to, your Rochester, you get your garbage plates over here, and you get, something different over there. It's one of the few minor league parks where if I'm going, I'll get on the website and I'll map it out and I'll go, okay, what do I want to do this time? Because the concession map, which often is out of date in many other spots, is like really a go-to spot on the Red Wings website, and I absolutely love it. And I was like,
yes.
What do I want to do this time? and
that is so nice.
Part of the problem is that you get something good and you're like, oh, do I really want to steer clear of what I know for something else? Dan, did you have something?
Ash had another question, and she's going for the juicy stuff tonight. Was there ever a danger of being dropped a letter? I will put it that way.
Dropped a letter. It's certainly possible. That can happen. It is in the hands of the major league teams. They are affiliated in the city they want to be affiliated. So it can always happen. And honestly, from my perspective, that's why we try to run the best operation we can. We want them to, we don't want them to say, oh God, we got to go back to Rochester. We want them to say, oh, thank God we're going back to Rochester and we don't have to worry about that. That's important to us. So we try to keep it good, keep it good for
make it hard for them.
Right. We'll make it as hard as we can for them. Make it good for the players. Let make sure that the players are taken care of and they feel when they come out to the ballpark that we care about them. And we do. Doesn't have to be we don't have to conjure that up. That is true. We have a deep appreciation for the players. And honestly, the big league people in Washington have been amazing to work with. So that's been awesome. Not everybody is that lucky.
I keep speaking of the Nationals. I'll try to keep this as
keep it clean.
I will keep it clean. Speaking of clean, old Fitzner Stadium. Whenever I just hearing all this, and as we're doing this, just reading about the stadium and the new place versus the old place, and looking at all this history on the Red Wings, and just not many. I had not a bad word has been uttered, but I just keep when you mentioned making it good for the players and the staff, and I've been to come from Philly, South Jersey. I've seen some bad venues and some bad facilities, and I just keep thinking about Fitzner Stadium and the players, and I'm just like, oh man, I think Thank God people like you exist in sport, in minor league sports. That's all I. That's my point. My point is that because,
Thank you. That's so nice. So Dave, I'm gonna chime in with something different. During the COVID year when we played no games, 2020, you probably know that we hosted the Toronto Blue Jays taxi squad.
Right.
Right. The big league team was in Buffalo, and we had the what not I wouldn't call it the official AAA team. It was all of their prospects, let's say, that they just didn't want to give a year off to because they needed the development. And that is one tremendous organization. They were great to us. They were great to us, and quality people.
That's good. Actually, it's interesting because I don't feel it's always been that way. I mean, I feel that the Jays were really strong in the beginning in the 70s and right through the 90s. And then when Labatt's was bought by Interbrew and, the big, huge Belgian beer conglomerate was like, well, we don't really want this. And then I remember hearing from like fans in Syracuse and them just being upset. And I felt that the Jays actually ruined that affiliation. And I mean, they suffered for it. They were exiled to Vegas, which for a while seemed like it was the last chair in the musical chairs when everybody dances around. And if you don't have a partner, oh, dang, we got to go to Vegas. So, I hope they learned from it. I think they learned from it because from everything I've heard from my friends in Buffalo, they have really loved being affiliated with the Jays, and it makes a lot more sense geographically, and not just for the major league team, but for the fans. Our friends at Buffalo, it's way easier for them to get to see the Jays than it is to get out to see the Mets or the Yankees. Way easier. And it's interesting how when some of my friends when they were affiliated with the Mets, they were really upset with the Mets because the Mets didn't provide the talent, blah 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 blah. But with the Jays, and I don't see that the Bisons have been that much better like on the field with the Jays, but they just seem a whole lot happier with that affiliation. I don't think it hurt that they got a whole lot of, financial help and upgrades and a lot of stuff when the Jays were playing in Buffalo.
Sure. But, like a lot of businesses, it's really about the people you deal with. Mm-hmm. You have, if you're with a good organization and, it trickles down. The players in some organizations understand that they have an obligation to the fans. Some organizations don't feel that strongly about that. But if you're lucky enough to be affiliated with a team that makes certain in spring training that they've told their players, this is part of the job and this is part of who you are representing us. So I like that in a team. I think that's really important.
I did take one question from, or do you have a follow-up, Dan? Or
I didn't have a follow-up.
Okay.
Ask a question because this has nothing to do with baseball. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I did promise our regular host, Paul, that I would ask this question. He wanted to know if you could find a way to bring back the Pawtucket Red Sox.
Jesus Christ.
Well, when I talked before about, as I'm sure Paul knows, when I talked before about a city trying to get funds for a new stadium, it was not for lack of effort, and Rhode Island just did not feel like they could come up with that money. And now there's a beautiful, incredible new stadium that is changing Worcester. It's changing Worcester. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think, well, Paul, truth be told, Paul worked at McCoy Stadium for a number of years in concessions. Found it hard when it closed its doors officially. But yeah, I think he begrudgingly likes likes the situation. Well, maybe not the situation, but the park in Worcester. He said he's kind of grit his teeth and said good things about it.
It is an amazing place, but we will forever miss Pawtucket. Honestly, it was one of our partners for an awfully long time.
Well, that's going to roll right into, I don't know if you can answer this. We spent a whole podcast talking about the longest game in baseball history, which was 33 innings strong, and it was between the Pawtucket Red Sox and the Rochester Red Wings. Paul knows about it far more kind of firsthand because he was around at that time. I read, I read Dan Barry's book, and actually when I went out to Pawtucket to see a game, one of the things that I got to do because I knew Paul is that I got to go underneath and see, some of the underneath stuff, and the owner there, Ben Mondor, had a ton of just artifacts. I could have spent the whole game just looking at that stuff, and I don't really know anything about the Red Sox or Pawtucket or anything like that. And one of the things they had was this big, huge kind of score line from that game.
Yes.
So, do you have any memories or anything, any little tidbits about that game and its place in Rochester history?
We'll never forget that game. It was unbelievable. Who could believe that if you turned the radio on, they were still playing ball in the middle of the night? How in the world could it have happened? And the general manager of our team was up in the press box helping to broadcast the game, and there's just no way. It's hard to imagine it happened. It'll never happen again. They shored up that rule, so it was obvious, and that the umpires wouldn't have questions about it anymore.
Right.
And how ironic that after 32 innings, it would only take one more a couple of months later
That's
to
true.
finish it up. But just an amazing time.
And you can point back to Hall of Famers who were playing in that game.
Oh,
Wade Boggs played for the Red Sox, and Cal Ripken Jr. was playing for the Red Wings. And I mean, it has that extra hook to it, right?
Yes, absolutely. Too bad there weren't more people around to see the later innings. I think the crowd had pretty much dwindled. I remember a story, maybe even the story was in the book. I don't recall if it was, of, one of the players' wives trying to call her husband all night long and, really questioning where he was, because she sure wasn't going to believe that he was still at the ballpark playing ball. So, just crazy time, a crazy time.
Yeah. And for our listeners who haven't read it, of course, Paul put me onto this book. It's called Bottom of the 33rd. It's by Dan Barry. I read about a third of it, and I texted him and I said, I thought you were sending me a sports book. This is poetry. It's just that well written. It just flows, and there are not too many books that I would say I couldn't put it down, especially if it's a nonfiction, right? I could not put this down. It was that good. It was that good.
That's fantastic.
Dan, go ahead.
Well, there's two things that I never failed to mention on this podcast. And the number one thing, we're not even, no, hold on, take this ride with me, Dave. We're not even going to mention it because we're not going to mention it. But it occurred to me as I was reading and listening along and participating in this, that one of my favorite hockey memories happened. I'm going to call it Frontier Field. Frontier. I think it was back in 2013. I remember this because the Americans and the Monsters wore. Well, the Americans wore their old Americans like vintage looking like 30s 40s jerseys, and Cleveland kind of in response for something they might have worn back in those days. But it was the Frozen Frontier. It happened at this ballpark, and again, it occurred to me as we were doing this interview, like, oh my god, I remember that very well because it was a frozen tundra. It was real snow falling, and it was a multi-day event, but the main AHL game was outdoor at this baseball field. That whole grandstand full. What are your memories of putting that it getting put together and that game itself and your involvement in that?
Were you here for that game?
I was not there. I was watching it. I had been at 2 outdoor games at that point, and my now wife, and I did discuss, like, for a second, because she'd been to Rochester before for Americans games. We're both big hockey fans, about going up there for 5 minutes. I'm like, you can go. I'm not ready to be that cold. I like the cold, but I'm good. And then of course watching, I'm like, crap, we should have gone. That looks amazing.
It was 18 degrees at game time that night. And I'll tell you, that was tough, but people wanted to be there. So under what circumstances would anybody go to a game like that in that weather, except the experience? You just wanted to be there for the experience of it. And I'll tell you, it was, I didn't participate in the preparation for that or the execution, but my staff did. And it was tough on them. So I don't think we'll be doing that again anytime soon. It was something. It was something, it was just one of those memories that you'll always have. But and of course, the entire infield had to be replaced after the game, which we knew.
That was what I was wondering.
So that it was very interesting. They played, kids teams played there all night long during that week when there was with the rink on the field. You got time slots, and I should say kids teams played there, but also adult hockey leagues played there as well. Everybody wanted a chance to be out there just for the uniqueness of the experience. So very cool, but yeah,
I
missed your chance.
Oh yeah, no, I would have paid any amount of money to get a pair of skates and skate out there. Are you kidding? That's me. Because the Philly, being the Philly guy, it's a different experience because I was at the AHL outdoor game at Citizens Bank Park, but that's in a major league. It almost, I don't know how to explain. I've been to the one at Hershey Park Stadium. That's where I was the coldest, and I think it was probably around the same temperature. I won't say it was colder, but at that point, when I can't feel my hands, who cares? And that's because somebody forgot their gloves in the car. But I want to say that being where it is, as far north as that is, and it being a smaller place, because it was like 10, 11,000 people at a minor league stadium with history that is rivaled by no one really, playing outdoor in that free. It's all coming back to me watching that, and I was paying attention because it's the Sabres affiliate, just watching all the YouTube videos and all that stuff, and it was all coming back to me. Just it almost kind of meant a little more, being it was a little smaller, so you were all closer instead of this big major league field,
right?
And it snowed. The snow, like, that's what drove home. Like, they're freezing. That's so cold.
And pushing the snow off the ice. Oh my goodness, there was something else.
Oh no, thank you.
It's coming down.
Yeah, we'll never do that again. Well, there you heard it here, folks. That's not happening again.
Okay. Well, I mean, I could go on forever and ever. I could go on for like 3-4 hours, but I won't. I won't do that to our guest. But I do have one kind of wrap up question before we wrap the whole thing up and put a bow on it for the night. What is the best part of your job with the Red Wings?
Being with the fans, it just there's nothing like it. And being able to provide this for fans and really honestly bringing joy to people, I feel very lucky to be able to do that. It's just it's a little bit of magic, 75 times a year, a little bit of magic. And that's, I think anybody that does what I do, our staff included, has to feel that way, because it's not always easy, but it's so worth it. And it's only worth it because it means something to people. If it didn't, it would take a lot more to motivate us to do what we do.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I understand what you're getting at with magic, with the idea of magic, but I always think that magic just sounds way too easy. And I know that it's not easy. There's way too many hours and way too many challenges and way too much stuff in the background to make it sound so simple.
Well, it's fun. It's a lot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I got to say, it has been just a pleasure to have you on. The Red Wings always, well, maybe not always, because, not always, but like I said, I've been 12 times. It's become an annual trip for me. The Red Wings do hold a bit of a special place in my heart. I do have my souvenir from the last game that I went to. They were handing out little bumper stickers. So it's just over on my left there. That's a permanent part of the set.
Right.
But before we let you go, is there anything that you wanted to, share your social media so that fans can connect or follow what's going on or anything like that?
No, I'm not very good at that. Yes, go to our website, www.redwingsbaseball.com, and pick up our social media links from there. We have a pretty good social media team at the Red Wings, so kind of entertaining, kind of fun. It's the off season. We have to drum up some fun.
Drum up some fun. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Dan, since you're the only other one here, where can everyone follow you?
Dan Law 83.
The schooling, you could follow him at Ballpark Hunter, the schooling supervisor. The PA guy, you could follow him at Puckman RI. And me, you could follow me at Profan9. Usually we talk about where we're going next. I mean, I'm actually heading out to Paul Bakerland. I'm going to Yukon real soon. Oof. And yeah, well, hey. And we've got OUA playoffs in football coming up right now. So anyway, check out the website for all of that. Check out all of our social media, and we'll be back in the future. I don't even know when we're going to be back. I think we're scheduled to be back on Tuesday, but we'll see. We're having some scheduling issues with those difficult people who weren't here today. So we'll get that all figured. For Dan and for Paul and Mark, thanks so much, Naomi.
Thanks, Dave.
Have some safe stadium journeys out there, and we'll see you next time.
See you in Rochester.